Hello, everyone, and thank you to the Mayor, City Council, and the City of Westlake for working with us on creating this virtual project update. We would love to have this meeting in person, but we are still very happy to have this opportunity to share our work. Although this meeting is virtual, we are going to try and provide opportunities for viewers to participate and provide feedback. If you haven't done so already, please take a moment to fill out the online survey after you have viewed this presentation. Or if you wish, you can submit questions using the form on the project page, or sign up to take part in one of our virtual office hours to ask questions and learn more about the plan, process, and recommendations. Here's a quick look at the agenda for this presentation. Most of the presentation will focus on the recommendations outlined in the Center Ridge Corridor Plan and where they are located and how potentially they could be implemented. The overall goal of tonight's presentation is to provide an update on the plan and to give residents additional opportunities to provide that necessary feedback and comment. Our team here at County Planning is really grateful for this opportunity to develop the Center Ridge Corridor Plan and work with such wonderful partners at the City of Westlake. My name is Michael Mears, and I will be walking you through the material, and I'm joined by our fabulous support staff and leadership at County Planning on this project. Our mission at County Planning is to provide professional planning services that help improve the quality of life for all residents in Cuyahoga County. One tool we make available to provide these planning services is an annual planning grant program. This program gives cities an opportunity to submit projects based upon their immediate needs, challenges, or long-term vision for their communities. In 2019, the City of Westlake was awarded professional planning services for its application for the Center Ridge Road Corridor, a project aimed at improving all aspects of the street in the City of Westlake. So what is a corridor plan, or why does Westlake need a corridor plan for Center Ridge Road? Well, for one, we know that transportation patterns have changed, and streets are becoming much different in how they look and feel with the expansion of things such as online shopping, delivery services, and ride sharing. And there's also a large desire for more multimodal transportation options using things such as walking and biking, scooters, trails, bike lanes, you name it. Therefore, it's important to develop a Center Ridge Corridor plan to use as a long-term guide and vision for how the community wants this street to grow and develop in the future, taking into account all these changing features and changing actions. A plan like this can really inventory what exists today, but then also outline recommendations to help achieve that community vision, allowing all future developments and future infrastructure improvements to take advantage of opportunities to implement some of these recommendations as they arise. Now that we've established the reasons we are here, we can start to walk you through our process in developing the plan. Our process is very simple. It begins with current conditions. This is where we try to get to know Westlake better and evaluate any issues and opportunities that exist on Center Ridge Road. We use all of this background information during current conditions to help craft a vision for the Center Ridge Corridor Plan during the second phase. The third phase is recommendations, where we are here today. This is where we identify steps the city can undertake to help achieve that vision. And the last phase is implementation strategies. This is where we focus on priorities and potential funding sources available to help Westlake put this plan into action. Although our planning process is nearing the finish line, completion of the Center Ridge Corridor Plan is really just the beginning and only the first step in a much longer implementation process for the city. Our plan really works to identify opportunities for improving Westlake, but these opportunities need to transition from ideas into physical actions during that implementation phase. Many of the projects included in this plan, and some we'll go over tonight, do have the potential to be early wins or quickly move towards implementation using existing resources or existing staff at the city. And a lot of those early wins can help build momentum towards some of the more complex or more long-term projects that require more detailed design or additional partnerships and funding. Really what we're trying to do is identify all of these projects so the city can take advantage of opportunities and being able to coordinate and collaborate with different projects, different agencies, and different departments to ultimately create a new and improved Center Ridge Road. The study area for the project is really simple. It's Center Ridge Road, or US Route 20, in the city of Westlake, going from the border with Lorain County all the way to the border with Rocky River. This section of US Route 20, or Center Ridge Road, is about 6 miles long. And although we're focusing mainly on the corridor, we did look at some areas north and south just to provide context to some of the recommendations, including in the plan. The existing conditions stage focuses on a lot of data analysis and community engagement. For the data and analysis portion, we review a variety of topics from demographics, previous plans, land use patterns, and transportation patterns. All of these is in a better effort to understand what's going on in Center Ridge Road and where the opportunities and challenges may exist. Providing opportunities for community input is also one of the key reasons why developing a master plan is so important. Community engagement is a key element of the process and one of the many reasons we are with you today. Engagement opportunities in the Center Ridge Plan have come in the form of public meetings, online surveys, and other stakeholder meetings. During this process, we have had over 500 survey and meeting responses from participants and over 1,000 individual comments on portions of the plan or comments with respect to what's going on along Center Ridge Road. What we've heard from residents in this outreach has varied, but people have responded by saying things like the road is narrow and feels unsafe, they don't feel safe letting their kids walk or bike on Center Ridge Road, or they would support longer car trips if Center Ridge was safer and more pedestrian friendly. Overall, our outreach indicated that Westlake residents support making improvements to Center Ridge Road in a variety of ways and locations. Public input has highlighted that many people thought the roadway needed improvements that focused more on people and less on the car. Generally, roadway designs can be influenced by efforts to move cars as quick as possible and reduce congestion. And we know that continuing to do that or building or expanding streets to provide as much benefits to vehicles as possible can negatively impact pedestrians or cyclists. But the inverse to this is also true. Slight reductions in convenience to those traveling by car can produce large benefits to other users on the street. What we want to do with the Center Ridge Plan is just that, balance car needs with the needs of other users and measure the success and quality of some of these recommendations and improvements to the street, not based upon how quickly they can move traffic, but on how well they can help create a safe, attractive, fun, and thriving street for all users. Streets like Center Ridge Road serve several essential functions and should be designed to accommodate all those users and their needs. Constantly expanding the vehicular zone can really negatively impact all the different elements and space requirements to implement recommendations in the pedestrian zone and really limit what or where certain items can be constructed or how they can build. So what we're trying to do with the Center Ridge Road Plan is ensure the proper amount of space is allocated to pedestrians and their needs and utilize the right-of-way to its maximum benefit to create a safe and comfortable environment for all users, including those on the road and including those off the road. As we mentioned earlier, all of these elements help combine to create our community vision. Current conditions analysis, feedback from public meetings and online surveys, and also this desire to balance the needs of all users. Combining all those elements together, we can help craft our vision for Center Ridge Road. So from all of those inputs, we have created a vision for Center Ridge Road that focuses on 4 key themes: making the street attractive, connected, safe, and vibrant. So when we discuss the idea of making the street more attractive, really what we're talking on is some of the simplest methods to start rebalancing our streets and effectively utilizing that proper public right-of-way by adding a variety of amenities and improvements to make that street feel safer and more welcoming to not only cars, but pedestrians and cyclists. Adding things like street trees and green infrastructure, public art, gateways, wayfinding and signage, site furniture and other public amenities are just all great methods to help make Center Ridge more attractive and welcoming for the user. Those recommendations can also go beyond the public right-of-way to include additional improvement programs and grants that could help improve storefronts, help improve existing signage, or help existing landscaping for all the businesses and other opportunities along the street. When we talk about connected, what we're really talking about is committing to improving pedestrian and bicycle connections to help foster healthier and equitable access to key amenities and destinations along the street. We know there's a lot of great amenities and destinations on Center Ridge Road, so what we're trying to do is help create access to those destinations in a variety of different ways by building multi-use trails that have been identified in previous plan, adding additional bus shelters to improve and enhance the existing RTA route, adding additional bike and pedestrian connections to different neighborhoods, but also to different destinations like Bradley Woods, and expanding existing bike lanes and bike boulevards to create connections throughout not just the street, but throughout the existing neighborhoods directly adjacent to the road. We also want to focus on safety and support efforts that make Center Ridge safer and more inclusive to all users, regardless of transportation choice. We know that residents identified safety and concern as one of the main reasons they may not walk or bike. Hopefully some of the earlier recommendations can kind of help with that, but we still want to identify design treatments that can help improve driver awareness of people walking and biking, hopefully leading to fewer mistakes or mistakes with less deadly outcomes. Adding things like high visibility markings and signage, reducing curb radii, or adding mid-block crossings and pedestrian islands. One additional way to work towards building a safe, connected, and active network is to start with children. In an earlier survey, many respondents told us they would not feel safe letting their children walk or bike on Center Ridge Road. A Safe Routes to School program can be used to help implement many of the safety recommendations listed here or that are included in the plan. And this program can also be used to help fund activities and events that promote walking and biking to school. When cities develop a Safe Route to School program, the entire community becomes a better place for everyone to walk and bike. Here I'm going to take a moment to talk in a little more detail about a few additional safety recommendations that could be implemented along Center Ridge Road. One of the first recommendations is access management, and this is the idea of either reducing driveways or curb cuts along the street. Access management really can improve safety, carrying capacity, and travel time for vehicular travel along the street. It can also really improve safety for pedestrians and cyclists using the sidewalk or any new multi-use trail along the street, is that reducing the number of driveways or access points reduces the potential conflict between cars and pedestrians as people pull in and out of different businesses or different office spaces along this corridor. One option to also consider is lowering speed limits. We know the posted speed limit on the street is 35 miles per hour, but the average speed that people are driving is about 31 miles per hour across the entirety of Center Ridge Road. Designing roads for high speeds dramatically increases the likelihood that a person struck while walking will be killed. In fact, the actual likelihood of surviving a crash at any speed could be getting worse because of the rapid increase in size of vehicles on the road today. Reducing the speed limit to 25 to bring it in line with the average travel speed that's happening on the corridor, and also tie it in with the existing 25-mile speed limit that happens east of the corridor, could have a potential to make the street much safer for not only pedestrians, but also for vehicular travel as well. The last recommendation we want to talk about is this idea of road right sizing. We heard a lot of different comments from the public with people wanted to see the road widened, they wanted to add turning lanes, they wanted to make it easier for left turns, they thought the roadway was too narrow or too tight. And so what we know is that streets designed for peak travel flow kind of often fail to provide a safe and attractive environment other times of day. So what we did is, getting back to this idea of balancing users, we looked at a variety of different roadway options and roadway configurations to try to see how can we make the streets safer for everyone and sort of look at addressing some of these issues that people had with the roadway. Our recommendation for doing this was to, in certain situations or certain locations along the road, look at implementing a road diet. A road diet is taking the existing 4-lane configuration and reducing that configuration to have 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane. Thinking of existing Detroit Road and Westlake as an example. Road diets are really important because they help reduce conflict points all along the street, including those conflict points that cause the most frequent clashes that happen on Center Ridge Road. Road diets can also improve operations, and they can really improve livability for pedestrians, cyclists, residents, and businesses, all without having to do major reconstruction of the street. In fact, the way that Center Ridge Road is currently constructed, a road diet could be implemented in many locations with just restriping of the existing street by adding new paint. And what we've learned from our analysis as well is the existing volume of traffic and previous studies of traffic along Center Ridge Road mean that implementing a road diet is not only feasible, but in a lot of locations could be the ideal situation to help improve the corridor. I just want to mention real quickly that a lot of these recommendations that we talk about for improving safety along the street, whether it's utilizing a road diet, adding medians or pedestrian islands, adjusting the speed limit, corridor access management, these are all federally approved safety countermeasures that have been applied throughout the United States that show increases in safety for all users of the street. So the last theme I want to talk about is vibrant. And when we talk about vibrant, what we're talking about here is trying to assemble a mix of different residences and neighborhood businesses and other unique opportunities to create a unique sense of place and a really vibrant street within the city of Westlake. And what we're talking about here is aligning development and character to match what people's vision for the street is, and using zoning code updates or corridor overlays or other regulatory improvements to help create more walkable or mixed-use projects that are neighborhood scale that really bring a lot of activity and a lot of vibrancy to the corridor. And then we also want to look at, are there other development programs or other tools that we can utilize or the city can utilize to help stimulate the type of development that people want to see along the corridor. And really when we're talking about these updates, we're talking about updating the zoning code and ensuring that regulation in the zoning code supports the community's vision and the desired development types. Right now we have a zoning code and regulations that are exactly the same along the whole entire 6-mile stretch of the corridor. And in some locations, the current zoning code may work fine for that intersection or that location. Maybe it's a heavy vehicular focused intersection that has a street that connects to I-90. But maybe there's other locations or other intersections where we want that regulation to be adjusted to match that desire for neighborhood street retail or neighborhood developments or walkable developments. So how can we update our zoning code to make sure that that's available to the community and to the city of Westlake? What we know right now when we talk about updating zoning codes is that common regulatory barriers to the redevelopment are zoning and design standards. Right now you can see this is the existing general business zoning setup for all of the Center Ridge Road corridor. It requires a 60-foot setback between this sort of right-of-way and your commercial one-story business, and allows you to put the parking up front. In a lot of locations, this is probably okay for parts of Center Ridge Road. But in other locations where we maybe want to build these neighborhood nodes or these more walkable districts, we may have to look at updating our zoning code to allow that sort of environment to be built. To talk about that, we talk about potentially creating an overlay district or a Center Ridge Road corridor design overlay. And really what we can do with this is we can adjust the building setbacks. We can allow those buildings to be closer to the sidewalk, meaning they're inviting for people walking there. We can create the most beautiful sidewalk or beautiful trail along Center Ridge Road, but if the building is 50, 60, or 70 feet from that sidewalk, people may not want to walk to that destination. We can allow mixed-use developments in addition to moving those buildings closer to the street, allowing for second floors or third floors of office space or residential spaces above the first floor commercial spaces. We can also move the parking to the side or the rear of the building to create that nice urban form and create that nice street frontage of buildings with entrances and windows and storefronts all along the street and the cars parked around the rear. So this is really what we talk about in different ways to sort of update the zoning to allow the development that people want to see be created in different locations along the Center Ridge Road corridor. So those are all, sort of a quick recap of all the different types of themes and recommendations we've included in the Center Ridge Corridor Plan. Now I'm kind of walk you with what those recommendations may look like when applied to Center Ridge Road. So this gives you an example of what the typical conditions of Center Ridge Road sort of look like and why we think some of these recommendations make a lot of sense. Right now in Center Ridge Road, we got 2 travel lanes in each direction with sort of space on each side for the sidewalk, in different locations, and also sort of a lot of different areas where parking is up next to the street or next to the sidewalk, and the buildings are set back away from that sidewalk. So our first set of recommendations, and probably some of the ones that are, what we talk about, those early ones, are attractive recommendations. These are the ideas that we talked about where you could just add street trees on the northern side in a lot of different locations where you don't have the large power lines like you do on the southern edge. Adding additional site furniture. The city could incorporate a bike parking program to encourage people to bike different locations. Adding things like trash cans and benches and other elements. We could talk about a landscaping and signage improvement program. The idea of creating sort of consistency along the corridor in terms of what different signage people have for their businesses. Adding public art in different locations can be utilized in the form of murals or sculptures or different elements to create sort of interest and excitement as people travel through the corridor on foot or by car. And then also implementing a storefront improvement program. A lot of residents mentioned in our feedback that they would like to see existing buildings or existing spaces redeveloped where they saw new businesses or new buildings popping up along the corridor. So potentially utilizing a storefront improvement program as a way to sort of recreate or revitalize some of those existing buildings along the street. So these are kind of the first steps when we talk about some of those early wins and way we can really improve the corridor, reutilizing that existing right away. Our second set of recommendations kind of focus on connected. And this is where, in addition to building attractiveness, we can really start thinking about, well, how can we create spaces to make it better for people to walk and bike along the street? Residents identified utilizing trail as their more preferred option of bike travel as opposed to bike lanes on the street. So adding a multi-use path that was identified in the city's bike plan has the potential to really create a strong east-west connection along the length of Center Ridge Road and different locations to connect people to a lot of those great destinations along the corridor and really sort of provide an additional amenity to the existing sidewalk that'll exist along the street. We can also think about adding additional bus shelters to really improve and enhance the existing RTA route and create really comfortable and sort of safe transit waiting environments for those people that use RTA to either get to destinations along the corridor or to move throughout the different parts of Westlake. And building on those first two recommendations, we really want to focus on those kind of first idea of building safety and how can we make the streets safer for all users. Thinking about reducing curb radii, making sure cars have to slow down as they pull into those driveways, utilizing access management, reducing the number of driveways on the corridor so that way there's not as many cars stopping and starting and waiting for people to pull out, and reducing some of those conflicts between cars and traffic, and then also reducing speeds, getting closer to what the cars are actually driving on the roadway, but also not encouraging people to have to speed up really fast to try to get up to 35 miles per hour, only to find someone in front of them is slowing down to pull in and out of a driveway and really kind of creating those sort of conflict points. And when we talked about a lot of these recommendations up to this point, when we talked about attractive, connective, and safe, really what we've done, if you noticed, we haven't really done any reconfiguration of the roadway. We've really sort of focused on how these are different ways we can make the street better, utilizing the existing right-of-way or utilizing the existing features that exist on the street. With the next set of recommendations, we kind of start to look at that road right-sizing opportunity and how we can reconfigure the street to really unlock some of those additional safety, connected, and attractive recommendations. So the first piece of this is obviously doing the road diet. In certain sections of the street, taking that 4-lane roadway and reducing it to 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane. This really improves a lot of different mobility on the street, including cars, and really can increase safety. And then when utilizing that center turn lane to create mid-block crossings and pedestrian islands for people utilizing the street on foot or on bike. We know that block lengths on Center Ridge Road are almost 6 times longer than what they are in traditional neighborhood developments. If you think places like Crocker Park, which are extremely walkable. So adding mid-block crossings and pedestrian islands are really important to increase permeability across Center Ridge Road and increase access to destinations for people of all users. And the last part of this is utilizing high visibility markings and signage to kind of increase that awareness of the fact that this is a space for pedestrians, and we're encouraging people to walk and bike along Center Ridge Road, either at intersections or at mid-block crossings or at driveways. So keeping awareness between the pedestrian and the driver that, This is a place for all users, and we really want to reinforce those efforts. The last set of recommendations when we're looking at Center Ridge Road is talking about this idea of creating a vibrant corridor. And this really gets into some of those zoning and land use recommendations that match some of those infrastructure improvements that we already talked about. We don't want to spend a lot of effort on infrastructure improvements and connectivity improvements to have our zoning and land use recommendations not match up to those. So this is where we talk about the idea of updating setbacks, bringing buildings closer to the street, and having those entrances directly adjacent from the sidewalk. Allowing those buildings to be mixed use, adding additional stories, 2, 3, or 4 stories, depending on where their locations are, and incorporating office spaces or residential spaces above those first floor retail buildings. Allowing parking to be on the side or the rear of the building to create that nice frontage and nice streetscape all along the corridor, and visual opportunities for people to see what the businesses are, or what opportunities are available for them. Using those median islands to create landscaping opportunities and create islands that we can utilize green infrastructure or completing green streets policies to really build a really thriving and really green and exciting environment. And this really gives you an idea of what the corridor could look like, and sort of with all of these recommendations kind of combined together, and how they build off one of each other to create this kind of complete vision for Center Ridge Road. Now, we know that not every section of Center Ridge Road is going to look exactly like this, and they're going to have all of these elements, in one area, and we're going to touch on that in a minute. But really, that's just to get an idea of what a Center Ridge Road could look like in specific location, and how these recommendations build off each other to really kind of create this complete vision and this thriving and active street. And when we talk about those recommendations and where we're located, really what we're talking about is the recommendations should reflect the corridor's uses and character. We talked about how the zoning should update along the 6-mile stretch, and we think the recommendations should reflect what's happening in those different locations as well. We kind of have the civic core with all these different community uses and different developments sort of east and west of that. So we want to make sure all of our recommendations reflect that existing character and existing nature of the street. Our first set of recommendations kind of focuses on that western edge, and you can kind of see a lot of these recommendations here and some of the ones we've already touched on. These include adding street trees, especially on the northern side of the street here, where there's already some room to be able to do that. Adding a multi-use trail all along this section of Center Ridge to create connections to the destinations, including adding a trail potentially down Bradley to the entrance of the Metro Park, and maybe an additional trail down Baylius to create an additional entrance to the Metro Parks. We can use this trail to reroute the existing US Bike Route 30 along this portion of Center Ridge Road, potentially adding a new trail north on Crocker Park to connect with the existing Crocker Park. There's a lot of opportunity here for improving safety, not only at the existing intersections, but adding potentially mid-block crossings, and also potentially a road diet to sort of tie in with the existing road diet that kind of currently happens on Center Ridge Road as you get west of Bradley. We think there's also opportunities to redevelop kind of a neighborhood node there at the corner of Bradley and Center Ridge, and really incorporate some of those zoning and redevelopment tools that we already talked about earlier on in the presentation, and potentially add gateways, signage, or other elements to kind of create an entrance not only into the Westlake, but also into the Center Ridge Road corridor. For the civic core, as we mentioned, this is kind of the heart of Center Ridge Road in a lot of ways. You got the community center, the new elementary school, the public library, the post office, and also the Dover Village kind of district. And really, we again think this is an opportunity to add some street trees in some locations, continue that multi-use trail, making that connection to the community center and to the library and the school, and then also continuing that trail along Westwood East, which has a lot of space and opportunity to create a multi-use trail on that roadway, potentially adding a new bus shelter here out near the school or near the library or post office as kind of an amenity that people might want to access. And also, it's sort of, this bus stop sits right in the middle of that 2-mile gap between shelters on the street, so it's a really good location for that. Adding new connections to different locations around the community, and potentially continuing that road diet west of, or east of Dover, I should say, sort of through Dover Village as a way to kind of help redevelop that area. Potentially here is a location where we could start that reduction of the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. So sort of from Dover east, reducing the speed limit to 25 to really sort of create a more vibrant street, a safer street, especially as people approach the school. And then also thinking about the school, this is really where we'd highlight the creation of a Safe Routes to School plan and how that Safe Routes to School plan can be utilized to implement a lot of the recommendations in this area, whether they're crossing improvements, bike improvements, trail improvements, you name it, and how a lot of those improvements can be utilized within 2 miles of a school. So if you're just 10 or 15 or 20 minutes walk away from the school, a lot of those recommendations and improvements can be implemented here. And the last but certainly not least is when we talk about the commercial center. And again, here I won't spend too much time, but continuing the trail on Westwood, continuing the reduction in speed limit and road diet through this commercial center. This was a space where a lot of people said they really felt the roadway was really narrow and the lanes were unsafe. Having a lot of opportunity here is to redevelop along the street, maybe potential for expanded or new corporate offices or other office buildings or mixed-use buildings along the corridor here. Continuing that trail north along Walter Boulevard to help connect up to Hilliard and maybe over to Clegg Park. And then also adding additional neighborhood connections and sort of an additional gateway at Clegg as people kind of enter the corridor. So with that, you can kind of see how we sort of identified what the recommendations are, kind of what they look like, how they could be implemented on the corridor, starting with maybe attractive, kind of building up to some more of the complex issues, and then sort of how these recommendations could be impacted or implemented in different locations along the street. So what we want from you is we want feedback on those ideas. We really want to hear from you and what you think of some of these recommendations. So we really encourage you to take a moment and take the survey we have on our project webpage, or use this link to take the survey here. It's really important to get that feedback, and it provides us an opportunity to sort of look at these recommendations, figure out what the community's priorities are, but also sort of figure out where we want to make adjustments moving forward. And if you want to get into a little bit more detail, you could also visit the project webpage and sign up for our virtual office hours. These will be sort of a short presentation and where it gives you the opportunity to ask questions and provide feedback on additional recommendations included in the plan and that you've seen here this evening. So with that, I thank you for viewing and really encourage you to take a moment to take the online survey or ask us a question or participate in the office hours, and we hope to hear from you in the future. Thank you.